Thank you. 150 liters. That's the amount of water that an average person in Europe consumes every day. It might sound like a big number, but daily routines for many, like dishwashing or showering, can push that number even further. Now, compare that number to 20 liters, even less than 20 liters in some African countries. 20 liters, it's less than what we use to flush the toilet. So, despite this disparity in consumption, we all share one common thing, even regardless where we are in the world. It is that the fact water resources are becoming more and more scarce. And soon, water conflicts will arise, not in just faraway places, but everywhere. In fact, they already are. So how did we end up here? It all comes down to one thing: how we manage water, how we use it, how we share it, and whether we think about the future when we do so. I'm a hydrogeophysics researcher, and I work in places where people rely on groundwater to survive. And I have seen how differently people interact or relate to water, from farmers to engineers and government. But one question always comes up: how can we manage water sustainably? The answer to that question might take us to the past. We might have to look into our ancestors. So let me take you to a place where people have managed water sustainably in one of the harshest environments in the world, at the Sahara Desert in Africa. A year ago, my team and I were in a city in Algeria, in southern Algeria, that we call Adrar. Our mission was to find groundwater. Temperatures were reaching 50 degrees, and around us there was nothing but endless sand dunes. And the entire time, I was wondering, how could people even survive in this harsh environment? And then I saw him approaching from a nearby sand dune, a man that we first thought was just a curious passerby. We are used to these people coming up and asking what we are doing. But this time, I was the one that is going to ask the questions, and a lot of them. So he approached and asked us what we were doing. We explained that we were looking for groundwater. So he smiled and he said, I can take you to a place where water flows abundantly. So obviously, we followed him blindly into the desert. No GPS, no map, nothing but his memory. It felt like he knew every grain of sand by heart. On the way, I noticed a series of holes in the ground. They were perfectly aligned. So I was intrigued and asked the man, what are those? And he said that those were Fougara shafts, air shafts for the Fougara tunnels. What are even the Fougara tunnels? So it turns out, in that region, local people have dug underground tunnels using their bare hand for over 20 kilometers. The idea behind it is to get to higher places where water is available and drag that water to lower places where they have their settlement. And the holes that we saw along the way were not random. They were placed there so underground workers could breathe and access light. So as we arrived to the place that he promised, it felt like we were entering in a whole new world. After hours of heat and sand and sun, there was suddenly life, palm trees, green gardens, and eventually a lot of water. So the man showed us the first place where water is collected after it emerges from the tunnel, the underground tunnels. And this triangular space, this triangular basin, is for people, passerbys, or even animals to drink from freely. As I was listening to the soothing sound of water, I couldn't help a comb-shaped structure at the edge of the basin. So I asked the man about it, and he said that this was how they are able to distribute water fairly between all the owners of the oasis. So I was even more intrigued. But as he was explaining, he invited us deeper into the oasis, where we found a group of old men drinking tea. And that's where we heard the story of the Fougara. So the old man explained that systems like the Fougara existed in part of the world. But what makes the Fougara of Adrar, of that city, particular is the way it distributes water based on the water quantity and not time, like the other systems. And this was made possible by an ingenious tool that they invented. And this tool, we call it in Arabic, al-hallafa. And it is something like this. It's a metallic plate, and it is believed to be the first flow meter, meaning a tool that measures the flow of water in the world. So it's a metallic plate with circular openings, and the openings are just like this with different diameters. And each opening is referred to as kirat. Yes, the same word we use to measure gold. I think it's obvious because in this context, water is as much precious as gold. So each of these openings represent a perfectly measured and a highly valued share of water. The distribution system starts at what we call the Kasriya. The Kasriya is the first basin that we saw when we entered the oasis. So the comb-like shaped structure, the openings are perfectly designed so each owner can get the right amount of water. And to build this, not anyone can do it, so to build this, 3 people are usually called upon, and these people need to be from the most trustworthy people of the community. I mean, you can understand why. So these 3 people, so it looks just like that, and I will show you afterward. So these 3 people, the first one, let's just call him the measurer. His task is to use the tool in order to measure the total flow of water into the oasis. And then comes the second man. Let's call him the accountant. So he uses an ancient technique of calculations to estimate the share of each owner. But the most interesting part here is that the shares of water do not only depend on how much water is entering the oasis. It depends on something more important, on how the owners contribute to the construction and to the maintenance of the system. So each of these openings represent how much water is flowing and how much contribution. So if you contribute more, the width becomes larger and you get more water, and yeah, you're more water, more rich in the desert. So after the shares are distributed accurately, the third man that we call the scribe, so he records these shares of water in a clay tablet or a piece of paper. So 2 records are usually produced. One is given to the Fougara owner, and the other one is placed somewhere with the imam of the mosque. So I eventually asked why the imam of the mosque was involved, and it was interesting because he explained in case of conflict and in case of dispute regarding the shares of water, the imam could act as a neutral mediator between the owners and use these records as proof and try to resolve any conflict. And this is how they managed to protect the harmony of the oasis and of the community as a whole. So as we sipped our 4th or maybe 5th cup of tea, the man continued his story, and he explained that the Fougara system is part of their heritage. It is something that reminds them of their ancestors' strength and resilience. And he spoke about a cherished and long-awaited annual festival where people gather around in the city and they chant, they eat together, and they listen to elders where they are speaking about ancestral knowledge. And all these festivities culminates with one thing, a decision to go out and clean the Fugara system. This is their commitment to ensuring that the Fugara system stays for generations to come. So this system is not just any irrigation systems. It reflects a philosophy of balance, of fairness, of sustainability. And our ancestors understood something that we often forgot. Water is not just a resource. Water is a shared trust. Today, most of us can access water using a simple turn of the tap. And with that convenience, we have lost that sense of responsibility. But water is not unlimited. In fact, even the desert was not always harsh and dry. 8,000 years ago, it was lush green forest and different ecosystems and a lot of water, like you have here. So, and the cave paintings show different types of cattle, animals, and people hunting, which means that the ecosystem was very rich. But climate changed, and the desert took over. But people there, they have adapted. They have decided to work with it and not against it. And today, our climate is also changing. So we face long periods of drought, followed by sudden, devastating floods. And this is not only for one region of the world. This is common to all the globe. So just as the people of the desert, we need to adapt, and we need to find solutions. So the uncertainty of our future resides in the decisions that we make today. And those decisions are ours to make, not only for politicians or for scientists. We are all responsible for it. So the changes that are going to happen need to come from everyone, from each one of us. Like an example from here in Slovakia, Zuzana Kapučová. I don't know if I am pronouncing the name correctly, but she is a lawyer, a mother, and a citizen. And she fought against an illegal landfill that risked to pollute groundwater in her city. Of course, people told her she wouldn't win, but she won. And today, her story is a reminder that change starts with people that choose to care. So let me go back to my original question. How can we manage water sustainably? Well, for me, the answer is quite simple. We all must feel responsible for it. So as you reach your next bottle of water, or as you leave the tap open, just remember those kids that are in Africa walking miles just to get one drop, or those people in the desert that are digging underground tunnels in order to get water. So in this perspective, if we manage to get the wisdom of the past together with the innovation and technology of today, we can build a resilient world and a sustainable one. And resilience, it means adapting, it means learning, and it means not just reacting to what is happening. And who better to learn from than our ancestors that have learned how to live in balance with nature for centuries. Today, the Fugara system is on the UNESCO's list to become a World Heritage. This is because it's not just the heritage of Adrar people. It is ours all. It is a reminder and a living testimony that we as a human being can and should do better. Thank you.